Hello, 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 beautiful people. Thank you for listening in to the CREP Fellows applicant recording session. My name is Dr. Jacob Francisco Miranda. I'm the director of the CREP Fellows program, and with me I have our 4 CREP Fellows. This is an information session. Thank you, Jadera, for waving. So if y'all can see the recording, thank you. Thank you all for being here, for listening, and for being interested in applying for the position. That's probably going to start around August 2025. Really, the point of the session is to say, one, what does it mean to be a CREP Fellow? Like, what is this position? It is a paid position. What does the work look like? What type of skills do you get? Does this help with the career? And so how we're going to organize this is, one, I kind of want each of the CREP Fellows to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about that. If they have any initial reflections, they can share it. And I can ask just some general questions about the CREP Fellowship that I would assume are like FAQs or frequently asked questions that any potential applicant might be interested in asking. We also do have an audience member with us today, so you also might hear someone else asking questions if they think of any. And again, thank you all for being here. So I don't know who would like to start, but I'm going to just popcorn it because Zoom's always a little bit difficult to figure out like who's going to go next. So just going from left to right on my screen, Christian, would you be able to introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about who you are, where you're coming from, where you're going, and how'd you hear about CREP? I think might be a good introductory way.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Christian Stevens. My pronouns are he, him. I just graduated from the University of Alabama. So super excited to head on to graduate school at Iowa State University, where I'm going to complete a cognitive psychology PhD. And it's kind of funny, actually, how this all turned out for me. Just because for the longest time, I wanted to go into clinical psychology because that's where you make the money. That's how you get to like work with individuals. That's how you're able to do a lot of the cool stuff that people think of when you tell them like I'm a psychologist. But then through organizations like CREP, I think I found my calling in research and just continuing to improve the quality of information that not only we consume, but what we give to the public and what other people are able to use when they're making decisions in other parts of their lives. So that was originally for me by conducting a replication of one of the selected CREP projects a few years ago, when we looked at how does having like a disclaimer attached to different kinds of news headlines affect how people interpret information. And then that led into me joining this fellowship because of how interested I was in that process and what CREP stood for. So I can definitely speak to that a little bit later about my passage and why I got into CREP, but I'll throw it over to Janira next to give her introduction.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you, Dr. Miranda. My name is Janita Seneschal. I'm a recent graduate from Central Connecticut State University. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in psychology December of 2024. And then I am starting a master's program for clinical professional counseling this fall. And I got involved with CREP during my Research Methods 2 course, fall of 2023, in which we joined CREP to replicate the Cameron et al. Study, which it's funny, in CREPECon there were actually 2 students, and actually Claire has actually done this replication as well. So this is just like, it's funny to hear about it again after, again, like Claire said, not being able to do it for a long time, like just having a refresher on that. Shoot, my bad. Sending it over to Claire now.
I'm Claire. I just graduated from Concordia College in Moorhead. And I will be starting my doctorate in clinical psychology in the fall. So I'm very excited about that. I want to focus on doing assessments in a community-based organization. And I got involved in CREP like Janira in my research methods course. And I just enjoyed learning about research and statistics and wanted to help new students in that area learn about that. So that's why I became a fellow. And Ben.
Yeah, I'm Ben. I went to St. Louis University in St. Louis, Missouri. I was obviously a psychology student, but I was pre-med. How I got involved with CREP was I actually didn't like research at first, and then I had a mentor in a research lab. They put me in a research lab, and then I found out about CREP because they did CREP applications, and I fell in love with it and I ended up here.
Nice. Thank you all for your introductions. I think that's a great way to see it, like the different pathways, the different career trajectories, and also just how you learn about CREP. And so our audience is very likely students who either in their class or in their lab, right, have just completed probably one of their first CREP projects. They're probably starting to slowly be introduced to open science to the extent that their instructor is able to, right? And now their instructor's like, hey, did you know you can get a job from this? And so keeping that in mind, I think maybe first talking about like what is this job, well, like more about the role per se, right? And as I'm sure the fellows can attest, right, like what a fall semester looks like versus what a spring semester looks like to what you're currently doing now in the summer, right? It's almost like this three-part. It seems like semester, like the role is almost a little bit different on the types of tasks that you do. So for anyone who would like to take it, or if people want to like start and then like add on to it, how would you describe, I guess, either a typical week and or maybe in this case, if we're bringing out like fall, spring, and summer, even a typical semester on like what do you do as a fellow, right? Like what is the job?
I guess I can start us off, and then I guess everybody else feel free to jump in whenever you want. Like my view of everything was fall. We got to code all the studies, which just means we got to view the articles that were going to be put on OSF for like the next CREP round that people get to replicate. And we were coding them on feasibility and interestingness. Feasibility, like, can it be done in one semesters and like with the resources that each university has, and then in how interesting we found the study. We did that, and then the spring semester, we kind of were just like waiting around for people who were doing CREP studies to reach out to us for like office hours, which unfortunately we didn't, no one reached out to us, but that's not something that we could really control. And then in the summer we were just, we got to, and also in the spring we got to go to MPA, which was really great. We all got to meet each other, and a few of us got to do posters, and we got to have like our little CREP booth there. And then now in the summertime, pretty much just right now breaking down the steps of the CREP process to streamline it for future users.
And I'll add on to what Janira said. I think mostly she covered everything that we've been through in our fellowship. But along the way, we've had so many opportunities to create new ideas and come up with other things that we would want to do. And Jacob's been an amazing leader in this regard. He'll bring these ideas forward, but a lot of the time he gives us the choice of like, okay, so what do we want to do next? So like we were given the opportunity to work with work on like an AI type study. And there were other opportunities that he floated around for us to get involved with more hands-on research. But we also did a large unit, kind of like a micro class or a crash course on different aspects of open science and why we are doing what we do in the first place. Because it's very easy to be like, yeah, open science is great, but like, what does that mean? And so again, Jacob's been really awesome and teaching us about like, why is this stuff important? Why are we doing what we're doing with the coding of the studies, and picking out like what would be the easiest or the most efficient for other students to replicate. So I think that's been a really valuable part of the fellowship, even if it wasn't a strict semester by semester type thing. I think that flexibility actually makes this program a lot more nice. It's not like as structured, so you get to a little bit choose what you want to do.
Could anyone speak to as far as like the number of work hours on a typical week, or for a typical semester? So someone's like, oh, I'm really interested in a job, but like, Janera, you mentioned of like in the fall, you code the next selection of studies, right? They're going to help generate the next, right? Because for the CREP students who are listening, right? I'm sure your instructor gave you like a list of 10 studies you could choose from. And maybe a question mark is like, wait, how did they pick these studies? The CREP Fellows are the ones who kind of helped facilitate like, oh, we think these studies are the interesting ones. These are the ones that are feasible. So like, yeah, on any given week, like what is the workload like? As far as like a time commitment, because I'm sure like many of them, even though many of you are graduating, right? Like you probably start off as students and you're like, I have to balance my student life with now this job. Yeah, that balance. Can anyone speak to that a bit?
I think we said 3 to 5 hours,
3 to
but
5
I
hours?
would say it's often less than that. I don't know if anyone has anything else to say on that.
If that's a challenge, Claire, I can always give work.
Mhm.
You get paid for 3 or 5
Um,
hours of work, yes.
I think, yeah, I know what Claire's saying is true, but I think that allows for, again, schedule flexibility. Because I know I had the privilege of being able to sit down and knock out like whatever assignment I had for the week and maybe like a 2 or 3 hour block on like a Saturday. But if you're someone who has to work or you have a lot of classes, and you have to kind of separate your whatever the role that we have for the week is into multiple sections, I think that allows for definitely enough time to get everything done. So, but yeah, like it could be 2 hours, it could be up to 4 hours, but it's not a huge commitment.
Sounds good. And then just for conciseness, kind of what I'm hearing is that people who get this job will help choose the next selection of studies. They'll learn about how to work with OSF, create an OSF project, manage a project, right? So if you're in your class and you didn't lead, you'll learn those skill sets. You may take an online course of just basic open science concepts that Christian mentioned. And really in the spring, you will have an all expenses paid trip, right? Hotel, flight to go to MPA, the Midwestern Psychological Association, where you get to talk about table, and if you have some research to present, that will all be financially covered. We'll go into like what the payment's like probably towards the end. I mean, we could go it now. Would any of you like to talk about like what tentatively what it is for you? Obviously, it might change for the next application cycle of how many students we can afford, but like what is the pay like compared to for someone who's interested? There might be like, but what's the money though? And I always want to be very realistic to like, well, what is this cost? Yeah.
It's 1,500 for the entire thing, right? Which gets paid out in 3 quarters. Yeah. US dollars.
US dollars, yes. For our international students, for anyone who's listening. We did have a CREP Africa talk, so we might have some international students who apply, and so that's good to know. And yeah, beyond that, it's weekly tied by bi-weekly meetings, check-ins, and as Christian mentioned also, I always try to be student-centered first, right? So like if you're busy, we can be flexible with that. If there's initiatives that you want to start, hey, let's do it, right? So if you always have ideas. So now that people kind of know a little bit more about the role, if they're already thinking about CREP and they're getting more into the research experience, or they might be like Ben, who's going to med school, or Claire going to site, right? Like they might have their own career trajectories. They might start asking like, well, what skill set am I going to learn from this? And so my question for you all, and what some audience members might have, it's what skills have you developed, or skills that you might have already had, but you felt like kind of have been improved through this year-long position?
Yeah,
Go
I
for
can
it.
answer. Yeah, I think it's a good way to get good science skills and critical thinking skills. I started off as not being good in research, and then really with CREP, it's very flexible. Like if you want to learn something extra, Jacob, you were pretty good about like, oh, here's what you can do, and here's some other like voluntary things you can go on and do some projects on. And it's good like resume and CV stuff as well. And yeah, good science skills.
For me too, I would say professional development, like having, a group of people who are all professionally developing, I guess, and also connections to faculty members and connections to just, I guess, the field of psychology.
I think CREP has been one of the few jobs I've had where I've actually felt motivated to work. Uh, like in my retail jobs or like even working for like the university, it's like, I dread going in and doing this. Uh, but this program, even though it doesn't pay a ton, I still think it gives off or gives you so much more than just a paycheck in terms of what you feel like you're actually providing to the world. I think there's very few jobs where you can say like I'm actually like benefiting society in a meaningful way. And I think CREP is one of those just because I can sit down and whether it's coding studies or having a meeting with everyone else or going to MPA, it feels like everything we're doing is for a good cause. And I don't know, personally, that makes me just feel good. I like doing a job where I feel good about what I'm doing. And I would definitely recommend anyone who is looking for that kind of like just part-time responsibility to join CREP because I think that's one of the lesser spoken but still really valuable aspects of having this as just like a job.
I second to everything everyone else has said. And also just want to add that, I mean, as long as it's all remote work, as long as you have a computer and reliable internet, you can be a great fellow. Like you can join all the meetings, you can do all the work. And then obviously you get a fully funded trip to MPA. Like that's really cool. You get to, meet other people from different states, faculty, colleagues, students, and you get to learn a lot. Like they said, open science, like, and it's free. Like the course that we got to learn on the open science here through Coursera is free. Like you don't have to pay a membership to do anything for this job. You just show up, and we have these biweekly meetings, and it's very flexible. It's like it's a job that you can just, reach out to Dr. Miranda or Dr. Waggy, and they'll really work with you. Like, oh, I have these sets of hours. Like, we'll work with you, and you can, I don't know. It's just been great. Come join us.
And just for additional, a little bit context of what happens at MPA, the conference, right? What we ask the CREP Fellows to do is one table. So just, be one of those people who's like, hey, do you want to learn about CREP and promote us? And the second thing we have them do is attend like as a panel. So kind of like what they're doing here, but they did live for educators saying like, hey, you should implement CREP in your classroom. Let's tell you about it. So it's really great promotion. But if you, for example, I think Claire and Ben, you had posters you were presenting as well. And so because your student fee, the registration fee, the flight thing is, you also, if you want to present your own material, right, you can do that as well. As per saying, if you want a job that's a little bit more impactful than retail and has, this huge societal community impact, that's great as well. So thank you all for sharing that. My next question for you would be, this is almost like a branching question, so you can pick one of the two branches, but has CREP, and you can say no if it hasn't, right, but has CREP impacted your perspective on either science and how science is done and just like the research process, or has it like impacted how, right, you still might have had your career trajectory when you started and you're still on that career trajectory now, but like has it made you think about your career even like a little bit differently or like from a different angle? And so for either one of, does it change your view on how you think about your own job and how you want to go in the future, and or has it changed your perspective on just research in general? So open-ended for anyone who wants to take it or feels like comfortable taking it.
Yeah, I can start. Since I kind of alluded to this in my intro. Like I said, I was originally interested in going into clinical psychology specifically because I was interested in forensic psychology. And I really wanted to work with people who were affected or involved with the criminal justice system. But then I found out as I went through my undergraduate years, and especially this last year, that psychology can be more than just sitting down and evaluating people. And in fact, there is a lot about the evaluation process or just the processes surrounding it that could really do with some more scrutiny and with some outside perspective on is what we're doing correct? Are we doing things the right way? And so CREP was very significant in my decision to change from the clinical path to the experimental / cognitive psychology path. Just because in this role and learning about open science and all the aspects of conducting ethical, valuable, reliable research coincided with my interests and just wanting to see a better world. And I think not only because of the research I did with CREP, the replication study, but being able to go through all the different papers that we coded, going to MPA and talking to people about like what CREP is, what we stand for. I think that just made me more affirmed in my convictions. It made me feel like I was doing the right thing. And that's what led me to end up just going with a cognitive psychology PhD program, just because I figured that would be the next logical step in taking the things I learned from CREP and actually applying them.
I want to say both. Yes to both. It did make me think differently about research because I hadn't learned about the crisis replication or the open science movements or nothing until my research methods 2 class. And then when CREP got introduced and then getting into CREP. So, and then also through learning more of the history through the Coursera models. I didn't know how big of an issue it was, not just in the psychology field, but other scientific disciplines. You know what I mean? It's not like our psychology field is not the only isolated scientific field that's having these issues. Like there, it's all throughout the board, and CREP is one of those places that is wanting more people internationally to just like be able to share data together, be honest about it, help with the replications, and just like increase our replication percentage. You know what I mean? And as far as for the second branch of it, like, does it make me think different about like my career? Yes, because I want to be a therapist, and like I have to also look at evidence-based practices and like see the research that's coming from them when I propose treatments for people that I'm going to be treating, you know what I mean? And I need to be able to critically look at the science and be able to determine if it is something that is real, or was it just a fluke, or you know what I mean? And I can now look at those numbers and look at the studies and be like, is this trustworthy? You know what I mean?
Clara, Ben, you feel good, or do you have anything to add? If not, no pressure, but if you did, go for it.
Yeah, I kind of developed like I don't know how to say, but a big interest in like open science and the replication crisis that I really didn't have before. And that was honestly just taking part of CREP as a student, not even as a fellow. So yeah, I think CREP is good in promoting that.
Now I kind of want you to think of, I want to talk more about the eligibility to be a CREP fellow, but specifically getting your perspective on the application process, right? So in your heads, maybe you can speak about, and you already kind of mentioned earlier of like, but be more explicitly, what made you want to apply to be a CREP fellow, right? So maybe there's opportunity, maybe there was much, so like, what made you want to apply? And then two, if you could like listen to someone who's listening to this now, right? And you're just like, here's my advice for you when you apply, like emphasize this, or like, I guess like what would be your ideal applicant, or like what type of applicant you'd be like, if you're this type of person, you should definitely be joining this crowd, or at least applying for this position. I love my two-parted question, so I'm sorry.
I don't know about you guys, but I forgot the application process just because it's been a lot. I think it was just like a Google Docs link, and then you had to just like answer a bunch of questions. Um,
So generally, just for maybe a good background, right? It's a couple of questions asking about your experience with CREP, like what project did you do? Was it in your lab class? It also asks like all about like your teamwork skills, your empathy skills. Were you the project manager for your class, or you were kind of like on the side providing support? And then also one of the requirements is, I believe, providing at least one reference. So
oh yeah.
someone, ideally your CREP instructor, or your person who can speak to, are you organized? Are you punctual, et cetera, right? So there's that two part of you talking about your own experience being as a CREP student, and then you getting a reference who can also speak to your work ethic.
Yeah,
Just as
and
a reminder for everyone, since I know it's been a year for you all
thank
since you
you.
applied.
Yeah, I'm like, what even went into it? Yes, so the reason I wanted to apply and knew about it was because my professor for my research methods 2 course, shout outs to Dr. Protzko. He was our principal investigator, and then like I was the team lead, and then I had 2 other classmates when we ran our replication. So I was like very much into like having to do everything, like doing the submitting the IRB and setting up our OSF page and like this and that. So I got really interested in CREP through my course, and then when they were asking for CREP peer mentors, which now is fellows, he just forwarded me the email, said, I think you should look into this, like you'd be a great opportunity for you. And he actually was my reference. So, if you build a good rapport with your professors and they see that you're working hard, they'll be happy to provide a reference for you to do anything that you want to do.
Actually, while y'all were talking about it, I went digging through my notes and I found the application questions. And most of them are pretty standard. Actually, it's just like, why do you want to be a peer mentor? But I think 2 stand out to me, which are, what are your overall thoughts on replication work in the field of psychology? And based on your past CREP experience, what improvements do you think can be made either within CREP or with replication projects as a whole? So the reason these stand out to me is the first question, like what are your overall thoughts on replication work? I was fortunate enough to have professors who stressed to me early on, like we need to be more focused on improving the quality of psychology research, like not just replications, but like in the ways we just perform and conduct research totally. And so that was my entryway into getting involved with CREP because that's when I started questioning, like, okay, what am I doing? How can I do it better? And I think that question is emblematic of what CREP stands for, especially this program of like, we're not just doing replication projects anymore. As a CREP Fellow, we're helping other students get involved with that process. Even if they don't want to, we're trying to design and expedite and facilitate things in such a way that students will benefit from it, even if they're not as involved as maybe someone like us, like the fellows. But I think that's why the second question that I mentioned, like the based on your past CREP experience, like what improvements do you think can be made, also stands out just because this is a program that is very self-reflexive and it takes critical looks at itself in addition to the things we're standing for. So like when we found out that there aren't all these like office hours needing individuals that we had planned early on in the spring semester, we made a mental note of like, well, maybe we won't do that in the future, or we'll spend this time like going towards another program or another idea, which I think is really commendable, just because, or yeah, commendable and emblematic of what we do. Just because it shows that we're not so staunch in anything that we're doing, that we're not willing to shake things up. And I think having gone through this process now, like that's something that I wish I had known as an applicant of, like, this isn't like any other job or position where everything's set in stone and you got to go through 4 branches of hierarchy or middle management to get your opinion or voice heard. Like it's literally in the application. What do you want to be changed? What can we do differently? And I think that kind of insight is awesome. And I would definitely encourage anyone who has those kinds of ideas about like, how can I tinker? Is my opinion validated? Like, how can I actually do something meaningful, even if I like these ideas? Like, this is a great program for you to do that.
Any other thoughts? Just checking with the other two, Claire and Ben. Or if not, thumbs up always works. All right, I saw some head shakes. All right, give me 1 second. All right, 2 more questions, although the first one's going to be another 2-parter, so technically 3 more questions. And again, feel comfortable with this. You've already kind of touched upon it, but just to be a little bit more explicit, is there anything that, looking back, right, hindsight's always, right, perfect vision, but when you're in it, you might see, is there anything that you wish you had known about the CREP Fellowship position before you applied, or like, was there any information that you would have known before starting this role? And if so, or if not, right, is there someone, I can also imagine that a lot of students who are like very nervous, right? They might be like, am I good enough? I don't know if I'm eligible. Is it worth me trying, right? Like, what would you tell someone who feels a little bit anxious and nervous about applying and they're just, right, like eligibility wise, they meet it, but like maybe just self-efficacy, or they're like, am I good enough, right? Like, am I good enough to be a fellow? Am I good enough to be part of this type of mentorship, menteeship program? So that's 2-part. Is there anything you would want to know before? Is there any information you would have wanted to know beforehand, or now that you wish you could tell your past self before you had applied? And then that second part of what would you tell someone who's just like really nervous, or they're like kind of on the fence about applying?
Yeah, so I was kind of on the fence of applying, and I did it very last minute, and I'm glad I did. But one thing that was kind of worrying me was like, do I have enough experience? Do they really want me? I'm a nobody, right? I think it's good to remind yourself that you're an undergraduate student, you're not a PhD student, right? Or you didn't finish your PhD, so it's okay to be new, and CREP does a good job of educating you.
And off of that, part of it is the peer mentorship. So like the fact that you are learning and are in that process yourself is actually valued.
Christian, Claire, feeling good, or anything you would like to add to that? Seeing a head nod from Janira, thumbs up for Christian. All right, my final question for y'all, even though I like boiling it down. In 1 sentence, someone comes up to you, says, why should I be a CREP Fellow? If you had to, like, this was your last plea, this was your last, like, hey, you should apply, And 1 to 2 cents is like, what would you say if you were to boil it all down? Don't rush all at once now, too.
I would say if you're looking for a low investment, low risk, if that's applicable, opportunity to develop yourself professionally, academically, personally, the CREP Fellows program is one of the best opportunities you're going to have, just because it is so flexible. There is so much that we can do, and it's not just for brownie points. You are getting paid. You're getting potential letters of recommendation, and you're getting those skills that come with being able to work on research in different ways in a role that's almost like a principal investigator in some instances, where we're getting to like pick apart and choose things. I think that's really cool.
I think CREP does a really good job at teaching you that being an honest scientist is very valuable, especially nowadays. And knowing our history is really important because we did a lot of unethical, untrustworthy science and studies that, all right, we're not proud of, but like, hey, this is something that is going to help us move forward and teach, the younger you teach kids that replication is important, the better science we're going to be able to do. I've had a lot of fun here. So if you're looking to have fun, if you love science, if you're looking into wanting to know more about how to do reputable science and do, the practices that are ethical and honest and all that good stuff, this is a great place.
I would say supportive and student focused. You learn about replication and you get personal development opportunities.
All right, Ben, what's your final 1-sentence takeaway? 1 to 2 cents.
I think just developing critical science skills and coming from low experience to high experience. And like Christian said, it's like low investment, but I want to add like high reward.
I like that as well. Obviously, I'm a bit biased here. No, thank you all for being here and like recording this information session with me. I'm glad that you all even mentioned a little bit about the pay, about what the job is like. I think Christian mentioned letters of rec, right? So for those people who are interested, right? I've actually been some of your letter writers already. And I'm sure you all know this in case I haven't explicitly told you all this, but you already know you can ask me for letters as well, along with Dr. Waggy, if you haven't already. How I would kind of end this is, please, I look forward for you to applying. I'll probably be conducting the interview soon, around end of July, early August. We'll be promoting it. And probably one benefit that the fellows, if they're willing, is that because they're one of the first cohorts ever with as part of this program, right? That also means that they're going to be one of the first alumni of this program. And so if we start an official alumni network, which I'm trying, we can invite these people back again. So if you're like, wow, Claire is so cool, Janir is a rock star, I wish I could meet them. If they're part of our alumni network, we will invite them back and you can talk to them directly. So that's a unsaid benefit, that you get to meet these people and be part of a community. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, the fellows, for recording this as one of your final tasks for this fellowship. And I appreciate you all. So let's end it. Bye.